Turn 16. That's turn.
I think that's the back end. And I think it gives us January, spread, February, the weeks of
Okay, I will now call to order the THPRD Board of Directors meeting for December 13th, 2023. Jessica, would you please take roll?
Miles Palacios.
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
Here.
Barbie Minor.
Here.
Lisa DeMontflaco. Here.
And we have no action resulting from executive session, so we will proceed along to audience time. Do we have public testimony? Everybody? No public testimony. Now we will move along to board time. Let's see, who would like to start with any updates, committees, things they've been up to, anything at all?
I'll go ahead and kick us off.
Thank you.
I was invited to attend an event that Centro Bakun put on this last week, where they brought out Charles Kamasaki to come and do a talk about immigration reform work that he has done in his lifetime. It was a really awesome event. It was a great opportunity to also hear from some Latino leaders in the community, talking about the work done here in the state of Oregon for immigration reform, as well as farm worker rights. So that was a really fun event that I was able to sit in on. Also went to the last Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee meeting of the year yesterday. And it was really lovely to get to meet all these folks in person. I want to say thanks to Keith for all the work that he has done with the advisory committee, and excited for Cameron to kind of take over the reins there. From the staff side of things, we also got to see the induction stovetop that the committee had used their challenge grant monies for at the Cedar Hills Recreation Center. And I'm super excited too, because both Brian and Kennedy at Cedar Hills are going to give me a little tour around the space in the beginning of January, when some of the programs are at the height again. So I'm excited to see all the wonderful things that happen at that recreation center.
You. Anyone else? Updates?
Yep. I'll jump in. Excited to join next week. We've got the Nature and Trails Committee, our last meeting of the year. And I'm expecting to have an update for us all on trail gaps. So we will be coming back at the beginning of the year to share that recommendation. So thanks for all the volunteers and our work, and look forward to coming and having a report next month.
I'll just share last week, maybe it was the week before, it's all a blur. We provided a tour to Rep Reynolds, as well as staff from Rep Pham's office and Don Amici's office of Cooper Mountain. Huge thanks to Bruce, who is everyone's favorite tour guide, because he can answer all the fun questions. So those will probably, I don't know if we'll do more tours, but they're always fun, and it's nice to share with leaders about our work. And then tomorrow I have the Expo Committee meeting, and I look forward to sharing some of their research about sports in Oregon and where the opportunities may lie.
Thank you. For mine, I'd like to share that we will have a new 12 Hills Park Foundation Executive Director. Gina Lovaco was hired to replace Eileen Kravitz. Gina, we're really excited. Well, first I would say we were really excited about the depth of the field that we had applying for this role. Great sign of what's been done in the foundation, but also what the district has been doing, that we had so many highly qualified, talented people who were interested in this role. Gina has great expertise in grants, major gifts, special events, and I think well positioned to build on the strong foundation that Eileen helped to lay with the foundation, and take that effort and the collaboration with THPRD to the next level. So I look forward to all of you getting to know her better, and continue to say that the really special work that we will do to deepen and go further on art and equity and financial aid and things like that will really happen with that increase in public-private money coming together to help us reach those goals that we have to support. So excited about that. So let's move on, shall we? We're going to go on to agenda item number 6. It is a public hearing resolution amending district compiled policies Chapter 5, Public Contracts and Agreements. Acting as the local contract review board, I will now open a public hearing regarding amending THPRD's contract rules. We have, I think, Jared. Hi, Jared.
Hello. Good evening, members of the board. Jared Isaacson, Finance Director for the district. In April 2009, the Board of Directors adopted the district compiled policies, Chapter 5, for public contracts and agreements. This has been amended over the years, with the latest amendment being in January of 2020. The Oregon Public Contracting Code requires that the district hold a public hearing prior to amending the contracting rules and procedures. Now, notice has been provided to the public for this hearing, and it has been published and posted. At the November board meeting, we reviewed the proposed changes to DCP Chapter 5, which provide for procurement authority levels that align with state standards and other governments within the region. Now, staff is recommending and is requesting that the board of directors, acting as the district's local contract review board, amend DCP 5 to reflect the proposed changes. And this is the report.
Thank you, Jared. And confirming we do not have public comment this time for this. Okay. Any questions, discussion amongst my peers? This? No? Okay. I will now close the public hearing. And I will be seeking a motion.
I move that the board of directors acting as the local contract review board approve resolution 2023-15, amending the public contracting rules contained within Chapter 5 of the district compiled policies.
Lily Minor,
Yes.
Lisa Montblanco.
Yes.
Miles Velasquez,
Yes.
Alfredo Moreno.
Yes. And we are on to consent agenda. Do I have a?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'm a second.
I will second.
First to the button. That's good, please.
Lisa Montblanco. Miles Velasquez,
Yes.
Barbie Minor,
Yes.
Alfredo Moreno.
Yes. Thank you. Rapid fire voting. It's good. Okay. Next, we have special guests from our levy task force. We have with Holly. Yeah, Holly.
Yep. And Justin, if you'll hit that little button. Okay, good evening, members of the board. My name is Holly Thompson. I'm a communications director, and I am joined tonight by 3 members of our levy task force: Sherry Wadman, Margaret Robinson, and Justin Lowe. We also have in the audience several other members of our task force: Elizabeth, Karishma, Monica, and Darrell. Thank you all for being here. This has been an amazing group, and they really dug in. They really looked at the issues hard and answered the questions you asked them to do. And it's been such a pleasure working with and serving with and helping this group. So I will kick it over to them.
Okay, I'm told I go first. Can you hear me okay? I'm kind of loud even if I'm not mic'd. So I'm Sherry Wantland, and it was really an honor to serve on the levy task force. I was particularly delighted to see how diverse the group was, because everybody that uses all of the services and things that we have, it's every kind of person there possibly is. So the group represented that well. I've lived in the district for most of the last 43 years. 4 generations of my family have used the trails and parks and events and classes and swimming and soccer and drumming and painting and cultural events. And just, getting all that healthy fresh air and the friendships that we've made. I'm really tied to this, the services that the district provides. Throughout my career at Clean Water Services, I partnered with THPRD for years. And after I retired, I was on the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee for a couple of years. I have always found your staff to be exemplary. So when I came to the levy task force, it was no surprise that they did an excellent job at giving us accurate, concise information that we needed to really understand these financing issues. They're kind of complicated. We got a very, very good understanding, and I was particularly impressed with the public opinion research because that confirmed what the priorities of our voters are, and it really showed us the clear path. We learned how staff has continued to maintain service levels for the community despite dire threats to the funding. It's time now to fix that. And I think the first step is to fortify the funding services with the levy before it's too late. Surveys show our residents will support a 50-cent levy. That's a start. Once the voters approve that, you're going to have to go back for funding for capital projects. We think that a bond renewal will ensure the integrity of facilities and measured expansions as the community grows. When we were being told what we were facing as far as funding shortages, it broke my heart to see the people and the programs and the services that will have to be cut if a levy isn't passed. It's important to get on the May ballot because that way we can make sure the funds are here before drastic cuts have to be made. So I know you know what we're facing, and I trust that you're going to act to keep our parks and recreation intact. Thank you.
I'm Margaret Robinson. I am a native resident of Beaverton. I have a unique connection to this park district. And I'm going to go into that just a little bit so that you can see the connection, what's happening now and what was going on. Let's picture the early 1950s. Two close friends sat at a kitchen table in a home in the Garden Home area of Beaverton. Their subject of conversation, Beaverton. The fact that it was changing rapidly from a farming community and the population was growing very quickly. One of these women at this table was Elsie Storer, and the other woman was my mother, Virginia Robinson. They together came up with the idea of perhaps trying to create a park and recreation district in Beaverton. It was a novel concept at the time. Well, the two of them got busy, and my mother worked closely with Elsie in the initial campaign to create this district. As a child of 10, that was quite a while back, I went door to door distributing flyers, educating our neighbors about this concept. Knocking on doors occurred all over Beaverton by volunteers. The successful passage of that first tax measure creating this district was literally a door-to-door campaign. My mother went on to serve on the THPRD board from 1956 to 1963. And she was president of the board when Howard Turpinning was hired. It was a pretty good hire that board made. She went on to be president of the Tualatin Hills Park Foundation. I earned college tuition by teaching dance for the district summer programs. Now, many years later, I am chair of the Elsie Storer Friends Group. Okay, now we're going to get down to business here. I appreciate that this board is seeking input on the very serious question of whether to place a local option on the May 2024 ballot. The task force created to provide this input took its task very seriously. As the task force was educated about the financial shortfall faced by the district in the coming years, the need for additional support became evident. There was concern about the chances, as you mentioned, for this measure to pass. And it was the public opinion data results that indicated positive public support for such a local option levy. And this is what helped the task force to decide to recommend the following. Firstly, THPRD should pursue a local option levy. Secondly, the projections from financial staff demonstrated that 50 cents per $1,000 of valuation for 5 years will allow the district to continue to offer programming based on full operating levels, plus, and this is a good part, purchase a very needed registration system. The third is that the local option levy should be on the May 2024 ballot. As chair of the Elsie Stir Friends Group, I feel it is vital that the values and funding priorities of the center continue to support the programming needs of the older population. And passage of a local option levy will assure the continuation of present programming for all residents of the district.
Good evening, Board President Moreno and the rest of the board. My name is Justin Lowe. I had the opportunity of also serving as a community member on the task force, along with my fellow task force members here and across from me as well. And I'd like to share a little bit about the process of how we got to this recommendation and some closing thoughts as to why this is our recommendation and some of the things that we bore in mind as we came to this conclusion. I'd like to start off by saying and echoing the sentiments of my task force members here by saying that your staff did an incredible job at informing and educating us about the situation and also giving us the materials and resources necessary to come to an informed decision on this. And the thing that stands out in mind for me was at the end of our very first meeting, where each department head got the opportunity to come before us with slideshows and share about what the cuts would be if this levy recommendation did not go through, or if the levy would fail. And it felt very dire. Looking up at it, we saw that hours would be cut for various facilities. There would be staff cut across multiple departments. Language services would fail to exist at certain times or completely at various facilities. And there would be resources like your mobile van that goes out and delivers recreational equipment to various communities that would no longer exist as well. And I think I'll speak for myself, but I know that the sentiment is also shared by many of the other task force members here today, that felt very painful to look at. It felt very painful to realize that staff cuts means potential breadwinners and other folks that hold full-time jobs for their families no longer being able to provide for those families, and also seeing and realizing that access to facilities and equipments and parks would be limited and curtailed. And when I thought about how your board and this district operates under 3 values when it comes to budgeting of leading with racial equity, environmental stewardship, and commitment to community vision, looking at those cuts felt like we were going to pull away from those values and that we wouldn't be living up to those. And it didn't feel right amongst us to sending the district and you as a board forward without being able to support some of those resources and programs. And so after that meeting, we decided that it would be really important to support a levy and to think about the importance of this community's collective tax base being able to support resources and programs for those that might not have the financial means or accessibility to access parks or gym equipment anywhere else. I'm thinking about renters. We're thinking about folks that are economically distressed. We're thinking about historically vulnerable and marginalized communities, as well as communities of color. And so it's very important to think about a family that maybe works a 9 to 5 or maybe 2 jobs. And if a facility's hours are slashed, they would not have the opportunity to maybe make it out to a facility or to a park with their children. Or thinking about how that van probably is the only way some of those kids in that community get access to recreational equipment. And so it did not sit well with us to like not pass a levy or recommend a levy of 50 cents. And so those are all the things that we bore in mind, and we felt that it was our responsibility to make sure that those that are most vulnerable in our community and those that depend on accessibility and equity within the THPRD district have that. And so with that, we came to our recommendation of passing this levy, or recommending this levy.
I just want to again express my gratitude to all of you all for your work on this on the task force, and just to confirm, they did vote on the recommendations, but they also added an additional recommendation. So these were the 3 questions you asked them. You can see their answers. And do one of you want to speak to the additional recommendation?
Sure. Our additional recommendation is that when the 2008 bond retires, we wanted to place a strong emphasis on renewing it and looking at ways as feasible as possible to expand that bond measure, especially because with the current levy recommendation of 50 cents, it was our understanding that there would still be some sacrifices made. And the sacrifices would probably be realized in our repairs and capital, like repairs to deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And thinking about how deferred maintenance is like a snowball effect, where if you don't get to it within the first year, it expands and grows down the road. We wanted to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible and also like responsible to what we currently have with facilities, and getting a bond that can repair them to the best ability that they need to be and operating at full capacity, and making those investments wholly, because we knew that the levy would not fully do that.
The task force had a really deep discussion that the 50-cent levy would be funding about $3 million a year in capital replacement. And the task force was concerned that $3 million a year for capital replacement long-term wouldn't be enough. And so that is the emphasis on when it comes time to think about replacing the 08 bond measure, to really emphasize capital replacement in that work, because we know that the levy doesn't fill the gap for us. So thank you. And with that, we are open to discussions and questions and comments.
Let's see. First, and thank you all for your presentation. I'd like to go to Victoria Lim, who's with us to give public testimony on the levy task recommendation. You got that, Jessica? Thank you.
Jessica, let me know when the 3 minutes starts.
As soon as you repeat your address, I'll start it.
Okay. 12477 Northwest Ashbrook Drive.
Thank you.
Board President and members of the board, for the record, my name is Victoria Lim. I live at 12477 Northwest Ashbrook Drive, which is within the TPHRD boundaries. I'm here tonight to speak with you about the proposed TPHRD local option levy and TPHRD's budget shortfall. I'm opposed to the board pursuing this local option levy, which will unfairly place a substantial burden on district homeowners in the form of additional property tax. Before I begin, I wanted to recognize the hard work and dedication of the entire board and all of TPHRD staff. My testimony this evening is not intended to take away from the commitment to public service that the board and staff have clearly shown. Having served on city council appointed commissions and worked as a local public servant myself, I understand the amount of time and hard work that is required of each of you every day, and I thank you for that. I am a first-generation immigrant to the U.S., despite my accent, and the sole financial provider for my family. We are new residents here in Oregon. We relocated from California because of the excessively high cost of living and specifically the high cost of housing there. So I was disappointed to see that TPHRD is attempting to increase the cost of housing for us here in the form of higher property tax. Instead of pursuing a levy, I would like to ask that you consider increasing fees. Specifically, the out-of-district rates are excessively low at only 25% above that of in-district fees, essentially creating a situation where in-district resident taxes are subsidizing out-of-district residents. Also, overall course fees could be priced to aim for cost recovery. Many of the courses in the catalog are quite low or set at $0. It's frustrating to feel that I'm being billed for the cost of others enjoying essentially free programming. I work hard to support my family and give back to my community in many ways, but I do not agree that digging into already stretched homeowner pockets is the solution to solving the district's funding issues. 9% of my property taxes already go to TPHRD. This additional local option levy would increase that amount to 13%. Reducing costs is another way to manage the budget, but I think it was misleading for TPHRD to state on its mailers that essential services like park garbage collection and toilet cleaning would have to be cut if this levy wasn't passed. Those cuts and other cuts are choices that TPHRD itself can decide. There's nothing that requires those essential services to be cut if the levy does not pass. There are other ways to achieve cost efficiency and other programming cuts that can be made to support the TPHRD budget instead of cutting essential services such as those. I ask that the board and staff consider some of the suggestions that I provided, as well as taking into consideration that my opinion is most likely shared by many other homeowners in the district. I therefore ask that you decide against pursuing the local option levy. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for being with us and sharing your perspective. Appreciate it. Oh, okay. We have with us in person, Dave Murray. If you can step up to the chair there. Oh, it's my mic's been off. Sorry about that. And let's see if you can just state your name and your address, and Jessica will give you a 3-minute timer. Love to hear from you.
I'm Dave Murray. My residence is 2160 Southwest 111th Place. It's a Portland address, but I'm a couple blocks away from Cedar Hills Rec Center, in-district resident. And like many people, I received this postcard that had a bunch of information about the proposed levy. And I want to say, you know, with respect to the task force and their efforts, I think it's good that people put in the time and made a considered recommendation. But I have another perspective, and it's similar to what this person that just spoke laid out in terms of, you know, concerns regarding costs. As a person who is retired, I face a tax bill every November. The water district, the park district, the fire district, the library, on and on and on. So when I see this, and it's talking about cuts that could be happening, I think it is a bit in conflict with the top line of what says the budget priorities on the website for the district. It says investing in our employees and technology. So this is essentially threatening to get rid of a bunch of staff. And an analogy that I would make is, if you have an entity like the 2 big oak trees on my property, and they're overgrown, you don't pay the roots. You get up there in the canopy, you look where you can have some savings. So it's just the tone of this just concerned me. I feel like when you have personnel budgeting over $45 million according to the website, if I see that correctly, over the course of a few years, I think maybe you could find ways to have less impact on the employees who directly affect the experience of the patrons. So if it's the people out in the parks taking care of things, or however that may be, I think it would behoove the district to look at other areas. I just feel like
But having another levy option and another burden on taxpayers is not optimal. So that's my 2 cents with. I think in general, the Park District does a good job. But at some point, I also feel like the district's gotten into a bit of mission creep and started doing other things that are not core to Parks and Recreation. This is saying that maybe the after school programs will suffer in some manner. It's like, what does that have to do with Parks and Recreation? Well, I guess it has an aspect to it, but if it's not profitable, maybe you look at that and say, we have something else we can do. Maybe we reduce that. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and sharing your feedback.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Okay. And I believe that is it for public testimony. Thank you. Oh, wait, we need to, let's talk. Sorry. I'm just yeah, so thank you to all who shared your feedback. Appreciate it all, and I will open it up to thoughts, questions from my peers on the board.
Sincere appreciation for your presentation, and we actually heard a little bit about your mother, but that was really wonderful just to get more information. So thank you. That warmed my heart. So we should have coffee. Sincere appreciation for everybody who worked on this, and I have been on a journey of this when we first talked about it, for sure. And I appreciate the conversations that we've had, all the research, the data that we've had access to. A few things that I kind of just wanted to say is that with property taxes in this case, like, everyone would experience the increase, right? So if you own an apartment complex, you would pass on that cost to to renters. So it's not just homeowners that are experiencing that. So I take that very seriously of what that means about who is experiencing, increase in rent. And it's not just homeowners, it's everybody. So I take that seriously. Anyway, wanted to put that on the record. But I don't have questions, and I think that, like, we're all still reflecting a little bit, but I take this really, really seriously, and I just really appreciate it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Feedback?
I'm going to echo the same sentiment in terms of just gratitude and appreciation for all of the hard work that you all have done to bring this forward to us and to share your views and your, I think we as the board and have a bit more insight to know and saw this coming. And I think the part that I'm just incredibly grateful for is fresh eyes, fresh experiences, as well as, again, legacy and appreciating what the district has done. I'm with Felicita in terms of reflection, understanding the implications. And I think we continue to have some work to do in terms of how we communicate with our folks out there to understand the gravity of the situation. And so I'm appreciative of the public comment that we had tonight. That will certainly be considered. I don't know that the balance sheet has been visible to all yet. I recognize this is a part of a process, and of course, in us making a decision to move forward and present that, ultimately it will be up to our voting public to decide. And so I just want to continue to hold ourselves accountable for painting that picture about how we got here, and unless we forget, it's not very far in the rearview mirror, COVID and the implications that had on the district, and how tremendously we had to shutter ourselves during that time. So again, thank you, and I look forward to doing some more considerations and bringing this back and seeing how my other fellow directors see this. So thank you.
In terms of comments, I think I want to echo and articulate that comment about legacy. I think the presentation that you all gave us was really great because it really framed well the history of this district, the present, and what the future could look like, both in a positive lens and in the lens of what happens if we don't have the funding for the district. There's a lot of work still to be done here and a lot for us to be thinking about as we move forward, and we're not taking action on this tonight. But I am just so thankful to the task force members for the work that you've done over these last few months. I also want to say thank you. I know Victoria's not on the teams anymore, but also to Dave for your public testimony as well. That is really, really helpful for us as you're elected in this space to hear from the community. And really just echoing that point of communication, sharing out the balance sheets, and making it as transparent as possible as we think moving forward towards the next portion of this conversation, what we're really looking at here in the district for the future of our funding.
Oh,
I just wanted to add that, I don't think Miles was here for this, but over the last 2 years, as we've looked at staff compensation, like we've led with our values and our commitment to ensuring we keep our amazing staff who are our greatest asset. And we know that because people tell us that. And so to live in our values we were losing staff to wonderful competitors, but if we want the best staff, like it costs. So I'm mindful too of that. We made a commitment, we led with our values, and we have some other big decisions to make to ensure we can continue doing that.
yeah, I would just say, this is one of, if not the highest quality park and recreation district in the state, if not in the nation. I think we're all very proud of that, to utilize the services. And I think none of us wants to see the erosion of that level of service that our community values and takes pride in. But I will also say this board has, as we've been considering this and thinking about this, and being presented with information, I have not seen a single rubber stamp here. It's all been very the healthy definition of the word skepticism of let's really feel this out and see can we do this, can we do that, kind of a stress test of it, and so I think I'm proud of the board and what it's been doing thus far, while waiting to see what the task force would recommend and hear from the public. I think we are very much still doing some learning, doing some evaluating, as you've heard. So really proud of that. It's been a board that has been thinking critically, and that's what we're here to do. So I look forward to continuing to review the information in the month ahead, and making a determination in the future. Really want to thank everyone who was part of the effort to review all this and have your eyes on it. We really appreciate it. It's a community effort and lift to even consider it. So thank you all very much, and thank you to those who offered feedback and shared your very real perspectives on the task at hand and the consideration at hand. So it is all much appreciated and duly noted. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to move us along to agenda item 9. Nope, not number 9. We have the general manager's report.
We're all good. Bruce is gonna
bad luck
lead this.
Okay, general manager's report with Bruce and Jeremy. Thank you all for being here. Yeah.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Barbrash, Nature and Trails Manager, and I'm excited to introduce to you a colleague who's been working with me for just over a year and has done amazing work for the Park District.
My name is Jeremy Grotwell. I am the Parks Resource Analyst here at THPRD, and as Bruce mentioned, about a year now.
So tonight we're here to talk to you a little bit about asset management, in particular mapping assets. When you look on our website, you can find this fantastic fact sheet, and it kind of nicely summarizes like all the stuff the Park District offers. And we're stewards of an amazing amount of stuff for the community. All these experiences, all these items have data behind the scenes. And the better that we understand what those things are, that we track them, that we have information, the better that we can really serve the whole community. And we can get out there and do things in an efficient and an effective manner. And Jeremy is here to really help us put some of that data to a visual nature and to an analysis nature. And the first kind of product that we have is to visualize and to be able to kind of share what we're doing. He's going to go through some of the new products that we have that are sort of the tip of the iceberg for what we're working on.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. And thank you to the board as well for having us. As Bruce mentioned, one of the key aspects of communicating this information is to visualize this information. In doing so, I, over the last year, have gathered our district resources, our best practices within the region, and then compared to our contemporaries throughout the metro area on different ways that we can communicate information visually, particularly from a map form. As you see on the screen right now, there are two examples of outward public-facing maps that we produced as a group. This entails the fold-out maps, ones that you would see that demonstrate the district and all the services and locations of those particular services that you would see on a pamphlet, for instance. On the left or right-hand side, you'll have a kiosk map that demonstrates when you're at a site what individual locations or services are nested within that place. The key aspect of these types of maps as examples are trying to facilitate three different goals. One of those is to establish a common aesthetic, common look, something that speaks to the idea that these are THPRD products, getting maps that look very similar. Another is accessibility, maps that are legible. Maps that detail here demonstrate similar look, feel, legibility, and different ways of accessing or facilitating access to these sites. The third is replicability. Being able to produce maps fairly quickly, being able to make versions of these maps, being able to produce maps for the board, for instance, in a straightforward, a communicative, and a consistent style. This will be one that you will be very familiar with in the near future. Variation in different sites. One thing I want to take into note here is that this is a one-page map communicating two different pieces of information. One is the site overall, as you see, and on the right-hand side, right center, is the context within the greater district itself.
So this map will replace the ones that you've been used to seeing. So we hope you like it.
Similar to replicability is taking a kit of parts, so to speak, different map typologies. There are different types of maps that communicate different types of information and communicate them at different types of scales or interests. In this case, we have two maps that are speaking on behalf of one project. On the left-hand side, you see the location of various pickleball and tennis courts throughout the district, who is responsible for the maintenance or ownership of those particular courts, as well as metrics related to those courts, specifically on the right-hand side. A site-specific analysis of proximity to neighbors is available on the right-hand side. That takes one of those locations, in this case, the Garden Home Park location, and compares its neighbors in relationship to that particular site.
So obviously this is an example, but these are the types of maps that you'll be seeing that help represent our story and a lot of information. And our goal, of course, is to take a lot of complex information and present it in a relatively straightforward, accessible way. What's exciting about this is this sort of represents part of our foundation of where we're going with asset management in the Park District. We're kind of moving swiftly through this foundation phase where we're really getting a lot of the basics together. We're creating systems, if you will. And then once we have those systems, we can start to put pieces together. There's a lot of information we can collect on our own, and there's some analysis we can do on our own. There are also commercial programs out there that are made specifically for asset management. And so we're starting to move towards that to say, hey, what would help us better manage these millions of dollars of assets? What would allow us to produce reports? What would allow us to communicate our needs? and also to be proactive in some cases about replacing those by better understanding what's coming up for needs. And then ultimately, the kind of exciting part is where we're able to crunch, to analyze, and to really move into kind of a production mode of having lots of information and being able to use that really effectively. And we're seeing this as a multi-year process, and the goal really is to build the quality pieces one piece at a time. So we really know extensively, what do all of our roofs look like? What's the condition of all of the asphalt in the district? And sometimes it seems to go, oh, yeah, it's just a parking lot. But when you think about a parking lot as $15 a square foot, it gives you kind of a different appreciation for how much value it has, right? It has service value, and then it has financial value. And so the more information we have, the better we can steward these things. We'll be coming back to see again in the future, I'm sure, but at this point, we're open to questions or discussion.
Discussion.
I just want to say I like the new maps.
Similar to, we're kind of, I think, all a bit data nerds in some ways. And I love the fact that we're constantly, I feel, always wanting to click down. Well, can you tell us this one too? And when I see this infrastructure, I'm like, man, if this could be automated and to your point, be able to like surface data more easily, it's exciting to see that come together. So awesome.
We're excited too, because I mean, there's the financial side, but there's also the service side of like equity and where are things and what are the conditions of things in different neighborhoods.
Proximity too.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Yeah, this is great, and I so appreciate that there's clearly a commitment to access and ensuring the information is accessible, so thank you. And I think this ties nicely to one of the topics that came up during our board retreat around looking at our properties and having thoughtful conversations about, what's the word? Not extra. I don't even like the word that we use. For surplus, which I don't love either, because it's not extra, because there's so much work we have to do. But what are we maybe not using to its full potential? Where are opportunities to partner? And so being able to look at the what we have even more thoughtfully, I'm excited for. So thank you. And nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
Yeah, this is great. I'm definitely, if the one you showed is kind of prototype, that's a great step forward. I think the more we understand and know what we've got and what we're dealing with for us and for you all, the more we can have thoughtful analysis. So bravo, charge on. Okay, thank you all. Next we are up to agenda number 9. And it is new business. We're going to start with art in the parks. Tim, welcome.
Hello, board members. I'm Tim Bonin, Development Supervisor. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about, give you a brief history about art in the district and get your thoughts on how we could move forward on adding art into our parks. So in 2008, the 2008 bond measure identified $340,000 for art for the creation, construction, and installation of interpretive features in natural areas to educate patrons about the history and the environment. Nature Revealed was led by Nature and Trail staff who formed a group of volunteer artist selection committee members. And then these committee members then went ahead and reviewed different artist proposals, and they selected 4 artists for 5 installations. The art itself ranged from $25,000 to $80,000, and the timeline from design to installation took about 5 years. Now, 2 out of the 3 are part of the bond program. The one on the top is Erythrinochori. They're giant seedlings that have sprouted out of the ground. And the reason why I'm showing these 3 is I wanted to share how art can be experienced and interpreted. So this is a very visual piece of artwork, right? You've got the vibrant blues and the orange and the reds, but then down below, which is another bond project, is Monument. So you've got this sculpted stone, this textured granite with words on it that people could touch. And also you have this soft moss on top. So that you've got this use of your sensories of sense of touch to interpret and experience that art. And then the non-bond project is the listening trumpet that's from Cooper Mountain. Again, right, it encourages the sense of hearing, and there's different ways for art to be experienced. And then in 2020, Communications led a new public art initiative to install vibrant wall murals called Talking Walls. The Talking Wall is a form of expression and visual storytelling about social and cultural relevant themes, usually represented as murals. Communication staff collaborated with Color Outside the Lines on a series of murals throughout the district that involved community participation in painting the final pieces. Commissions range from about $7,200 to a little over $20,000, and that just depending on the quality, the quantity, and the scale of each installation. And the image at the top is from Greenway Park. And this particular installation was done by a Native American artist. And there's also artists in the images down below at the Aquatic Center along the corridor. We have an installation by Latinx artists, as well as at the Babette Hornstein Tennis Center. We have an artist installation that was led by Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. This past year, planning development staff took on our own initiative to add art in 2 parks at Pio Pio and Laurie's. This was a pilot project for us to understand what the opportunities and challenges would be for us to engage in artists and hire them for art in our park projects. And since both of these projects were recently went through extensive community engagement, where we established a concept plan, some theming, and a park name, we wanted to use this information and share it with the artists for them as inspiration to create art pieces for both these projects. We collaborated with Ideal PDX, who commissioned a Latinx artist for each project. The art ranged from $6,000 for Pio Pio on the top to just over $14,000 for Laura East and the images in the bottom. The namesake Pio Pio, Spanish for chirp chirp, is the artist's inspiration to use a native bird of the Northwest and link it to regions and countries in the world. The artist superimposed a stellar jay onto 10 different tapestries of colors and forms associated with these regions and countries. In the upper left, the turquoise color represents the Middle Eastern region. The one in the middle is India, and one on the end represents Native Americans. The namesake for Laura East, Spanish for the root, the interdependent relationship between a tree and earth or people and the community, was the artist's inspiration to create a mural of 4 seasons that will be painted on the entryway, an entryway circle that we've named the Welcoming Circle. This also includes engravings of the words community, connection, family, and unity, in which the artist wanted us to engrave 2 of the words in Spanish. The artist wanted to rely on both languages, English and Spanish, as a sort of a learning tool for both. And these stones we place on the pathway that connect back to this welcoming circle for the park. So for this discussion, there's 3 areas we'd like to get your feedback on. First, we'll talk about the budget, and then timing, and then the selection process. The 5-year CIP list commits $25,000 to each new park. And a new park can be anything from an urban plaza, which is about anywhere from a quarter of an acre up to an acre, to a neighborhood park, which is 2 to 4 acres, and then a community park, which is 8 acres or greater. So there's a size difference between these spaces. And then also to consider is the location, because you could have a small space like an urban park close to downtown, which would have a lot more visitors than say a neighborhood park, which is out on the periphery of the district. So what I'd like the board to consider is, do you think that the $25,000 is appropriate? And should we maybe scale that money between the different sizes of the park or the location? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that just one more time for my clarification?
Yeah, I'm a little confused too.
Sure. So there's $25,000 committed to each new park, and those parks are various sizes. So again, whether it's an urban park, pocket park, all the way up to a large community park, is the funding appropriate? Should it influence the scale, or how much funding should be used dependent upon the scale or the size of the site itself? And then there's that location aspect, because some sites, again, will attract more people just by density, right, where it's located at. If you think that there's something in downtown Beaverton as opposed to out on the perimeter, do we think we need to put a higher value or lower value to that park site?
Again, Tim, could you also repeat the two examples we had for the two recent sites, what the cost value were?
Sure. Pio Pio and Lower East. Yes, Pio Pio was a series of murals. There were 10 panels and it was $6,000. And then with Lower East, there'll be a mural on the sidewalk and the stones engraved, and that's around $14,000.
Another clarifying question. With each of these art installations that are put in with the new park, it's going to be different cost with a different artist each time.
Yes.
So with that, like, if we quantify on like a scale, is that going to affect like what artists we could possibly work with if we don't just do the flat 25?
Well, it's a good question.
I would imagine depending upon the artist, maybe they're like, I mean, understandably, maybe they're like, well, we don't, make any proposals less than 50 grand, potentially. That's not my world. That's just somewhat educated guess, I guess.
Yeah, depending on the medium, right, that they're using as well.
Sort of love this question because you've kind of stopped me. Because at first I was like, hello, equity. But as I think more about this, when I'm thinking about like a tiny park that maybe isn't as impressive, profound as a bigger park, like them having $25,000 to do something impactful in that park is really exciting. And this other big park maybe has a lot of investment already into it. So I think if I had to choose right now, I'd stick with the 25 per park. But I may change my mind in the next 10 minutes. But I really appreciate you asking this question. And I love the talking walls so much. I love them so much. Like I'm sitting here as I'm thinking about how much I mean, personally, as a Latina woman, like the fact that my culture and family is reflected in those walls. Like, I mean, just so freaking beautiful. So I feel like talking walls everywhere.
For context as well, we're an input opportunity to lead to a policy topic. So at some point, we could sink this in policy, which I think is appropriate for the board to speak into it. It will be the board's policy as we go about designing future park sites.
I'll jump in. I think knee-jerk reaction if that's the road in which we're going. I don't see equity showing up if we use location as a determining factor, because I think wherever the park is, if that's your community park, then you should have the same beauty and joy and representation for your community park, even if you are on the outskirts versus a more urban area that's going to get foot traffic. So for me, that would not be a decision maker of how I would apply funds. I think it's reasonable to say the size of site makes sense. To me, that's a logical thing. A larger park's going to need a larger mural, a smaller space needs a smaller. So having some flexibility there. I think though not listed, I've heard Director Moreno mention this, and I would love the storytelling that goes behind the art. So I don't know how that applies into the funding of the 25K. But I think oftentimes that's a moment of education as well. That is a moment of community building for those who may not know why such art exists. And so I would love to even see that elevated more from a storytelling perspective so that we can be grounded in it's not just a wonderful thing to see, but why? Why here? Why now? Who did this? What's the story behind it? So I would like us to ensure we've got some funding to maybe elevate that.
And we've thought of that both with POP with Laura East. Each one will have a kiosk. So as a starter, we're going to have a little description on each one. But then we're looking at ways like how do we do that in a more permanent manner, QR codes or something, where there's just a little plaque or something to describe what it's about.
Yeah, no, it's exciting.
Can I? I think at minimum, I'd like to see a minimum, you know, so maybe it's like 15K. Because I'm thinking too about artists who are so often undervalued that often donate their time, you know, in our commitment to racial equity, you know, I imagine we're doing a lot of outreach to BIPOC artists and making sure that they are paid fairly. So just thinking like maybe at minimum, we should have a minimum. Tim, I'm gonna be thinking about this for a week, so this is a great question.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about selection process too, which may.
I would just say the budget, I'm also not, there's not an absolute, size versus, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard because I really need to have evenly applied, policy. It would give me, I would need some time to kind of ferret out what that looks like to be able to say, you may have a large park, but you may not need, I don't know, there may be a smaller park in a particularly sensitive area that could really benefit from this more than a big park somewhere else, even if neither of them are, if they have equal foot traffic, or if the larger park has more foot traffic. How do we do that? So I don't know right now, but that's my 2 cents.
Where my thoughts are at right now with the feedback that my fellow directors have said, is I like the idea of having a minimum, and it seems like a sliding scale around the size of the site seems to be the best idea. So a bigger site having like a minimum of 15K makes sense. A smaller site having the minimum of 15K doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think that mixture of sliding scale and like looking at size of site is what resonates best with me at this time for funding.
Yeah, thank you. Next is about engaging an artist in when should that happen? Is it during the pre-planning process or post-construction? And I'll share with you again with our own pilot project with POPO. Again, we had all this great information that was fresh. We could share with the artists and really inspire them to come up with something very cool and for the site. And so having that information and that the park was already finished, we're able then to work with the artists sort of on their own pace. There wasn't a lot of pressure behind how quickly it needed to be get done. It did put the sort of the onus on staff to really figure out where that art should go and what appropriate for the site and where it should be placed on the site. So whether that needs to be more part of a community discussion or not, you know, where it is involved along a new project, if it's a new project. And then for Laura East, you know, we're working through this, coming up with getting an artist involved as a project was about to start construction, which is a bit challenging because now you're on a construction schedule. You're trying to make sure there's space for it and work with an artist and stay within the construction budget. So that gets a bit challenging. And for us, we don't want this to be quick. We want this to be authentic. We want the artist to really be inspired and have time to, you know, come up with something that's real meaningful for the site as well. So again, we don't want to rush the process either. So there's something to consider about the timing of it, you know, and what I'd like to do is actually jump into the selection process, which we'll talk a little bit more. Goes back to about the timing of when to engage an artist depends on the approach and how we want to select an artist. So typically there's a call for artists, right, which is this like an RFP process, request for proposals, which what we do for consultants. You can go through a call for artists, and there's different ways to do it. One is to actually sort of circumvent that would be to collaborate with another agency. For instance, we reached out to the city of Beaverton with their art program, and at one time they worked with RAC, right, the Regional Arts and Cultural Committee Council, and they had pretty much a short list. They went through that process, a call for artists. They had artists for murals, artists for sculptures, and they would work with their artists to hire them, retain them for art in the city. That seems to be changing and has dried up a little bit. May not be available, but that's one thing we could look into with other agencies of using a list that's already out there and using artists from that. The other approaches, the other ways to go about it is go through a RFP process and retain a curator. We could just create an RFP where we have several sites, and we go to a curator, let them go out and select different pieces that could be voted on by the community, by the board. Or we could create our own shortlist or our catalog, similar to we have a name catalog, right, for selecting different names for new parks and trails. We could also then go out and solicit artists and create our own catalog of artists that we could use sort of at any point in time over the next, say, 5 years for projects. So that way we would have the ability, if we wanted to bring them earlier on in a project, again, like in that pre-planning process, just to be able to go through that more quickly, have an artist we can work with and start working on that, working with them as we go through concept plan and naming. That could be an approach. Or it also gives us the ability of, if we just finished 1 or 2 parks or had some parks, to go through that list and select an artist that way. And there could be, again, with this catalog approach, is that we would establish a committee, an artist committee, to review all this different work too. And it could be members of the community that could help us as well. So to have that public involved early on in selecting it, and then we have those artists established. So that's another way to go about it. So these are the different approaches we could look into.
I like the idea of an artist catalog. I do also wonder if there is still space for there to be moments where there are open calls for artists too, not just to fill the catalog, but in like specific cases where like we want there to be something that is like fresh and new, not from someone that we've kind of already put in our pocket to think about for later. On the timing piece, the granola side of me loves the idea of them being involved right from the start, but it does sound like that does make it harder for planning wise. And I think that it makes the most sense for them to come in as the park is getting wrapped up at that kind of like final stages piece, to make sure that we're on track in what we're providing to our community in terms of getting that park ready to go.
I'll jump in. I'm also a fan of the catalog and our own short list. I think it will just continue to diversify who all we're going with. I think having a curator and or collaborating with other agencies, I worry that we don't have the opportunity to build our own relationships and to cast a wider net. And in that wider net, like really local and ensuring that we've got community voices there. From a timing perspective, I'm torn because I'm a planner, and I think I do my best to figure out options Z all the way through Z. And I think if we wait until too late, what if the idea is something amazing in the middle or something so there's a collaboration that I think makes sense, but I understand in prioritization that maybe an element of a talking wall and these art pieces aren't as important to the planning process, but I really do see value and partnership there. So I rely on the experts in terms of like, again, getting the park ready, but still affording an opportunity to have this element considered.
Feel like I'm gonna go the opposite, which isn't helpful. I'm sorry. but 5 people, that's what happens. Well, for timing, yeah, I'm also really torn, and I could argue both points. And I also think about like what it means to have an artist at the beginning, and each artist is different, and some have experience with like public involvement and working with the public and working with children, and so I think that would be really important, and what it means to like center community. So I think it would have to be like an artist with that level of experience, just knowing how we do our park design, which is very much in alignment with our values. Shockingly, I think I like the most expensive option here about a curator on staff. I actually think we've talked about this years ago. I feel like there's an email exchange somewhere, but and I'm mindful that like RAC is going to look really different a year from now due to some funding changes that they're experiencing. In my dream scenario, we're just dreaming, could we share a curator with the city of Beaverton or with Washington County as a way to save costs, but also work together more effectively. I like the idea of a shortlist / catalog, especially because we have all that experience with the naming catalog, and that, we just have such a perfect example of how to do that work thoughtfully. I would love to explore a curator and what that could mean as a partnership project. And I say all this knowing that things are tight right now. And I was re-looking at when I knew this was coming up, I re-looked at our visioning. And I literally did a control F for, art. And it wasn't a top, outcome or need identified. So I'm also mindful of all of that. But my goodness, how it brings people together, how it makes people feel welcome. It's pretty profound. So I really appreciate all your work on this, and I really appreciate you asking us these tough questions. And I'm excited that we're gonna create some policies so that you and the team have more direction. That's really exciting. Thank you.
Right. My 20 cents is first of all, yes, thank you for bringing this. I've been chomping at the bit for it, so thank you. I will start with, I really just love the idea I just heard of a collaborative approach to art, but I don't know if where our partners might be in that on the prioritization scale, but that's a very interesting idea. Beyond that, I would look for, I would kind of be curious what other, best practices there are in other places that have good examples of working well in other communities in Oregon, outside of Oregon. Timing, I'm torn. I think I will say with all of this, maybe aside from the budget, but especially with the timing, I feel like it's kind of a secret sauce that will kind of sometimes we'll get it exactly right, sometimes we won't. How do we stay nimble enough to where we're kind of thinking that might be something where an art installation could live right there as we're looking at the park design, but we're not. It doesn't have to be right there. An artist can come in and say, "I don't think so," or how do we do that both? It's kind of the art of the park design maybe in the future. But I love that we would be thinking of that in advance. I think of I'm sure there's some great examples of yes, we know where this park is. There's something here. We know there can be something right here. It just is obvious almost. I looked to the kind of impromptu talking wall that we had with Mauricio Ramirez, who came in from Chicago and took an old wall and made an incredible mural out of nothing that was never designed to be an art installation. And if you all haven't seen it, I forget the name of the park, but it's kind of tucked away, but it's kind of mind-blowing from a national muralist, right? That happened. But that to me is an example of an art kind of coming, the dandelion out of the concrete, right? So I love those examples too. So how do we do that as a robust bureaucracy to allow for that push-pull? So in general, my comments, along with Felicita, believe strongly that parks are for the people, especially the neighbors who live around there. So I love the idea of bringing more. Whatever we do, I hope we can allocate some portion to just making sure that there's always room room given to see what we can put in. Maybe it's simple in some and profound in others. But it's, I think that art mixed with the great nature and play that we have and relaxation just can say, you belong here. This is your park and your community, and we welcome you. So it's a hugely powerful thing. We're doing it with our naming, which is really exciting. We'd love us to do the naming and add that little extra. And I say all that back to my comments at the beginning of the meeting about the foundation. I know we can do a lot with donation money and things like that, similar to Talking Wall. So I know it's not entirely up to the district itself to lift all these grand visions that one board director may have or the community. But yeah, really appreciate that. I know I just kind of blabbed a bunch of stuff that necessarily didn't solve the problem I'm famous for doing. But thank you for bringing this to the floor and for sharing the history, which I really didn't know myself. So that's extremely helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right. We are on to the next agenda item of new business, system development charge, 20-year capital improvement project list. Gary and Peter.
I think Aisha maybe will provide a opening statement.
Yes, so this is our first review of the 20-year plan. This was originally developed a few years back, and we are due for an update. But what we're talking to you about tonight is making some really targeted changes until we do a more full methodology update. So we have Gary Keck, our Planning and Development Manager, and Peter Swinton, our Urban Planner 2, here to talk through the reason we're looking to make this particular change. And just so you know, we're talking to you tonight as a first opportunity. We plan to come back to you in January. So if there are any changes you'd like to suggest we consider, after you hear what we're presenting, we can take those into account for what you'll see in January. And then we will have the 5-year capital improvement plan that we will bring to you in February. So I'll turn it over to Gary and Peter.
Thank you, Aisha. So tonight we are here to talk about the 20-year system development charge capital improvement project list. So we're going to call it the SDC CIP. Presentation because it's a mouthful. And like Aisha mentioned, there's no formal action tonight. We are going to be coming back next month, and we're here to just seek any input you may have in the process. So Peter and I are going to go through this presentation, and I'll pass it to you, Peter. First slide.
Thanks, Gary. Hello, nice to be with you this evening. THPRD's 2020 SDC methodology established the SDC fees that are charged on residential and non-residential projects within the district to increase the capacity of THPRD's parks, trails, natural areas, so that they can accommodate population growth from new development. SDC fee revenues fund projects that ensure new people living and working within the district have access to high quality parks and other recreation amenities without compromising the service we offer to existing residents. The SDC CIP is integral to THPRD's 2020 SDC methodology because it's a core input in our level of service model and is used to derive the district's SDC fee charged on new development across the district and within discrete growth areas known as overlay areas, such as North Bethany. Next slide, please. Thanks. When THPRD last began the process of updating its SDC methodology in 2018, staff used the 2013 Comprehensive Plan update as the basis for the district's future capital needs. Needless to say, lots changed since 2013, including the district's foundational plans. In 2020, THPRD adopted its award-winning Vision Action Plan, or VAP. And earlier in 2023, the district adopted a new comprehensive plan, or comp plan, based on the VAP. In the last decade, patron demand for pickleball has soared, and pickleball was recognized within the comp plan's recreation and leisure trends analysis as a fast-growing sport. Additionally, Results from a survey this past summer showed a broad interest in developing new pickleball facilities, including a larger facility that would allow for year-round group and tournament play. Recognizing these trends and patron interest in pickleball, the VAP and comp plan encouraged the district to be responsive to emerging sports trends, invest in all-weather play resources, regularly engage the community to determine needs, and commit to developing programs and classes that serve those evolving needs. The proposed modification to make the SDC CIP would make the SDC CIP more responsive to the rapid growth and interest among THPRD patrons in the sport of pickleball, and is aligned with the VAP and comp plan guidance as it seeks to infuse the SDC CIP with the changing interests and needs of THPRD patrons. Next slide, please. The proposed SDC CIP modification would combine and repurpose 3 existing projects valued at $6 million in total into one project to develop a pickleball facility estimated to cost $6 million on an underutilized portion of the HMT complex. Staff feels this location offers favorable conditions to develop a district-wide pickleball facility because it's buffered from residential areas, creating minimal noise impacts for patrons living in nearby neighborhoods, is adjacent to existing HMT parking and restrooms, and existing utilities at the HMT site would simplify and reduce the cost of providing drinking fountains and lighting. The 3 projects staff proposed repurposing were selected because, as previously mentioned, we're seeing really high demand for pickleball facilities and courts. There's presently a deficit in the number of those facilities available to our patrons, and we don't currently have space available for these SDC CIP future athletic field projects because THPRD doesn't have land in its existing inventory for these facilities. We anticipate having land for these types of facilities in the future, but there are no opportunities THPRD is able to act on at present. Additionally, in 2024, staff anticipate the need to reevaluate the entire SDC CIP to ensure it's consistent with the future vision expressed by THPRD patrons within the VAP and comp plan. In this reevaluation, we'll assess whether there's a need for these fields and that our staff are proposing be repurposed into the pickleball facility. And if they are needed, there will be an opportunity to add them back on then. Turn it over to Gary.
So the THPRD's SDC Administrative Procedures Guide, what we refer to as our APG, details the district's administrative procedures used to implement THPRD's SDC program. And we just wanted the board to know that in section 10 of the APG, it does give the board the authority to modify the SDC CIP at any time via a board resolution. It also states that the district is required to provide 30 days notice to the SDC interested parties list if that modification increases costs to the SDC fee. And the proposed modification we've talked about tonight will not increase the underlying costs from the projects. The projects that we propose to replace with the pickleball facility match costs. So we don't need to make that modification or that public notice. So as next steps, staff will plan to bring the resolution back to the board for consideration in January, like we've mentioned earlier. Additionally, as Peter just mentioned, next year we will be reevaluating this list and our methodology in general. Per the requirement we have in our methodology, it's got to be done by 2025. So next year we're going to start looking at that because it could be a long process. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions or feedback you may have related to this. Wendy there.
Shut up.
Who's first to the button? Oh,
Thank you so much. I think this is one of the most like interesting documents of the whole packet. In our commitment to accessibility, I'm hoping we can add like a legend to this for January, just so we're nerds, and so we understand most of the acronyms, though, to be honest, not all. I had to ask a few questions. And so, well, I guess it's maybe the directions, right? The Northeast quadrant. Yeah, just in a community accessibility, explaining like these acronyms as well as like what these type of parks mean. I think that, you know, as we work every day to get more people engaged in our work, and as people are paying closer and closer attention, you know, helping them navigate a document like this. Like, what does a small urban park mean? If I'm in North Bethany, what does a neighborhood park mean? So I think just empowering our folks would be great. And then I imagine for that January meeting, we would potentially have the Cooper Mountain expansion amount that we talked about and to reflect it in this document.
Yeah, I'll speak to that quickly here. So as we did with this proposed pickleball facility, we need to keep that bottom line number that you see on the chart the same, because if we change that, that can change the SDC rate. So in January, what we could simply do is take another look. Like Peter explained, we had athletic fields that we don't foresee an opportunity to build currently. We can look at other projects within the existing list to see what might not be imminent and use those funds to shift into a new line item that could be South Cooper or Cooper Mountain specifically. So if you'd like to see that, we can absolutely do that for January.
Looking back. Okay, so just so I think I understood, I'm curious about the, you know, the 3 projects, and so the what we're saying right now is that, I mean, obviously we know the pickleball demand outpacing the supply, of course. So what we're saying right now is even if there was no demand for pickleball, we still would, fulfilling those 3 projects would still be challenged based on land available and things. I mean, it wouldn't be immediately breaking ground in all these new fields.
At this time, that's correct. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. Great, well, this is helpful, and yes, yes, any help kind of breaking down some of the acronyms and things like that is great, although I do see some, but yeah, thank you very much. This is great. Look forward to learning more next week.
Great, thank you for the input.
Okay. Oh.
So can we just clarify?
Yeah.
So is there board consensus on the adjustment we just discussed? Or, okay, just wanted to make sure we have it. Thank you.
Well, I'll have to tell me when you nod my head.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. Okay, great, thank you. Consensus. Okay, well, we are at the end of the agenda. Covered a lot. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all. Thank you.